accounting is not quite the science that people might want.
In accounting, you can do things like they do in Italy when they have trouble with the mail. You know, it piles up and irritates the postal employees. They just throw away a few carloads, and then everything flows smoothly thereafter.
Again, folks. That happened in some unnamed international country.
Yeah, Italy.
Okay.
Yeah, structured as Europe was structured. Letting in Greece into the European Union was a lot like using rat poison as whipping cream. It was an exceptionally stupid idea.
Yeah.
It's not a responsible capitalistic country, a place where people don't pay taxes and so on and so.
I've tried for years to get him to use country A and country B, but he
and committed fairly extreme fraud in the course of getting into the union. They lied about their debt. And so Europe made terrible mistakes. They have politicians too.
You think it'll be behind them in 10 years?
I think Europe will muddle through.
Sure.
Think what Europe has already muddled through.
But we would be delighted, even with that dire forecast, not overly. We would be delighted tomorrow to buy a big business in Europe that we liked, and we'd pay cash for it.
I hope you'll call me if it's in Greece.
The European Monetary Union has a major flaw, and they're grappling with a way to correct that flaw, and with 17 political bodies and a lot of diverse cultures, it's really tough for them to do so. They'll do it in time, in my view, but essentially they synchronized a currency without synchronizing much else, and nature finds the fatal flaw always, and so does economics, and they found it fairly quickly in terms of the euro, and the structure that was put in place will not work, and they'll have to find something that does work, and they will eventually, but they may go through a fair amount of pain in the process. I've been amazed, at how fast the world has changed. I thought the internet, for example, in terms of GEICO, would affect younger people very quickly in terms of their buying habits, but the truth is that it's spread across the entire age range very, very quickly. Huge change, and you have to respond to that, and I am not the best person by miles to do that, but we have people that are very good at it in our businesses, and they're thinking about it plenty, and they'll continue to think about it. But it would be a terrible mistake to put me in charge of social media at Berkshire Hathaway. And Charlie would not be a particularly good choice either. Charlie, do you want to defend yourself?
Well, I don't understand it very well for a very good reason. I avoid it like the plague. And I hate the idea of the teenagers in my own family immortalizing for all time the three dumbest things they said when they were 13.
Yeah, we would have been in big trouble, Charlie.
We would have been in big trouble, both of us, if that were the system. And so I think there's a time when your ignorance and folly ought to be hidden.
Yeah.
I also think that when you multitask like crazy, like the young people do, none of the tasks is likely to be done well.
Is there anyone we've forgotten to offend?
If you found a business that attracted you in sub-Saharan Africa, outside of South Africa, are the conditions right today to make that investment?
Well, I might not know enough to do it myself, but I think I wouldn't rule. If it was attractive enough and I thought I understood the nature of the business, I would probably get some advice from some other people, and I might not end up doing it, but I wouldn't totally preclude it.
I saw that done. The University of Michigan hired an investment manager in London who specialized in sub-Saharan Africa. And I thought, my God, how are they doing this? And what they did is the little banks would trade in the pink sheets in Africa. And the first thing people would want was not to have the money under their pillow. And they just bought all the little banks in Africa. And they made a lot of money. So it is possible, if you know what you're doing, to go into very unlikely places. I would say we're not very good at it.
No, that isn't our specialty, but it can be done. And if we were poor enough, we might even be thinking about doing it, right, Charlie?
I don't think so.
Okay. Next year we'll prepare for this. Okay. Station 5.
Hello, I'm Marvin Blum from Fort Worth, Texas, the home to 4 of your companies.
Absolutely. We love Fort Worth.
Thank you. We love you too and your presence in our community. I'm an estate planning lawyer, and it's interesting as we wrap up today to ponder that the baby boomer generation is about to pass along the greatest transfer of wealth in history. I can design plans that eliminate estate tax and pass down great amounts of wealth to the next generation. But many of my clients come to me and say they want a plan like Warren Buffett's, leaving their kids enough so they can do anything, but not so much that they can do nothing. Now they ask me, and I'm asking you, how much is that? And how do you keep from ruining your kids?
Yeah. Well, I think more kids are ruined by the behavior of their parents than by the amount of the inheritance. That your children are learning about the world through you, and more through your actions than through your words. From the moment they're born, you're their natural teacher, and it's a very important and serious job. And I don't actually think that the amount of money that a rich person leaves to their children is the determining factor at all in terms of how those children turn out. But I think that the atmosphere and what they see about them and how their parents behave is enormously important. I would say this: I've loosened up a little bit as I go along. Every time I rewrite my will, my kids are happy because they know I'm not reducing the amount anyway. And I do something else that I find that, which I think is an obvious thing, but it's amazing to me how many people don't do it. I think that your children are going to read the will someday. That's assuming you're a wealthy person. Your children are going to read the will someday. It's crazy to have them read it after you're dead for the first time. I mean, you're not in a position to answer questions then, unless the Ouija board really works or something of the sort. And so if they're going to have questions about how to carry out your wishes or why you did this or that, why leave them endlessly wondering after you die? So in my own case, I always have my children, I rewrite a will every 5 or 6 years or something like that. And I have them read it. They're the executors under it. They should understand how to carry out their obligations that are embodied in the will. And they should also, if they feel there's anything unfair about it, they should express themselves before I sign that will, and we should talk it over, and we should figure out whether they're right or I'm right or someplace in between. So I think it's very important in wealthy families. Once the kids are of a certain age, I mean, I don't advise doing this with your 14-year-old or something, but when they get, certainly by the time they're in the mid-30s or thereabouts, I think they should be participants in the will, and I do think that if you get to be very wealthy, that the idea of trying to pass on, create a dynasty of sorts, it sort of runs against the grain as far as I'm concerned. And the money has far more utility. The last hundreds of millions or billions have far more utility to society than they would have to create a situation where your kids don't have to do anything in life except call a trust officer once a year and tell them how much money they want. Charlie?
I don't think I want to go into this one.
Okay.
And I'm absolutely sure you don't want to discuss your will with your children if you're going to treat them unequally.
No.
That is poison.
But one of the problems you have, I mean, and what you want to discuss just for that very situation is there may be circumstances where one child will have much more of an interest in one type of asset than another or something of the sort. And if you want to make sure that your definition of equality in terms of handling different kinds of assets meshes or at least is understood by the children, so that they don't think the fact that you gave one a farm and another a house or something of the sort resulted in inequality when you thought it was equality. Charlie, you got any?
No,
He's staying away from this one.